So welcome to my MOAC 7412R2. In this lab, we are looking at implementing dynamic access control. I already have all four of my servers turned on. And so first thing we're going to do is we're going to log into our domain controller. I'm going to go ahead and maximize my screen. And once we've done that, we're actually going to open up our group policy management so we can edit one of our GPOs. So tools, group policy management. And we are going to be looking at our domain controller. We're going to go ahead and edit our domain controller. And once here, we're going to expand out computer and policies, and then administrative templates, then systems, and then KDC. Once here, we're going to look at KDC support claims. We're going to go ahead and enable it. And we are changing this option. We're leaving it supported. And we're actually done with our GPO. And that will be applied to our domain controllers. Oh, let's close out of it. Now let's go to Server Managers. We actually want to set up Active Directory, the Administrative Center. And this is actually new for Server 2012. So we're going to navigate to the Dynamic Access Control node, and we're going to click Claim Types. And here is our current claim type. We're going to click New, Claim Type. And from here, we are going to set up our new claim type. What we want to do is on this side, we're going to keep user. On our left side, we're actually going to go down to department. Make sure user is selected on the other side. Click OK. And that way we now have a display name and attributes. We'll set up a new claim type for description. This time we're going to choose claim types for two classes, user and computers. Now we have department and description. All right, so now we're going to go back to our dynamic access, and we're actually going to look at our resource properties. And to enable the department resource property, we need to go to resource property and then go to department and actually enable it. I double clicked on it, that's not what I meant to do. You'll see that it's disabled. Right click, enable. We also want to enable confidentiality. Let's go ahead and enable that. And now let's go and exit out of our administrative center. Let's hop over to server 1 and log in. Once we've logged in, let's go to our shared folder. Let's create a new rich document. Let's call this doc1. And now let's go ahead and navigate to our file resource manager. tools, file resource manager. We'll actually now have a classification manager. And let's go ahead and set up classification properties. And so now let's go and refresh it. Notice our confidentiality and our departments are now there. Okay, so once we've done that, let's go ahead and right click on our classification rules. Let's create a new classification rule. Let's go and name our rule confidentiality. Let's go and look at our scope. Let's add a new scope. We're going to set that to our shared folder. Let's look at classification. Notice we actually have confidentiality and department. So we're going to do a little bit of regular expression editing. So for the parameters, we're going to configure it. We want to set a regular expression, which will be a string. And the string is going to look for HR. As long as it happens once, we will actually set it to be confidential and have a very high specification. Because regular expression will search for strings in the Word document that has HR. As long as it occurs once, it automatically flags this as confidential. Click OK. I accidentally messed up. I accidentally forgot to do the evaluation. Let's go ahead and set the reevaluation and the overwrite. And now click OK. All right, now that we've set our rules, let's go ahead and rerun the I always do that. I always go back to classification manager. You have to make sure you click on classification rules and then go to actions. Let's rerun the classification with all rules. I want to wait for it to be completed. And there it will run. It'll give me a nice report to verify. Now let's do some verification. Let's go to our document. Let's go to its properties. Under the classification tab, you'll see that it doesn't have the word HR, so it's not really confidential. Let's see if this actually worked though. Let's edit our document. Let's call it HR document. So let's go ahead and check its classification again. Confidential is still none. Let's go back to our file resource manager. Let's rerun the rule. You'll notice now it's set to high and it's set to confidential. You can still open it, but if we check its classification, it's showing confidential and the value is set to high. That way we can make sure that our regular expression really functioned. Okay, moving on, we're now going to be implementing a central access policy. So let's go ahead and exit out of everything. All right, let's go ahead and go to our shared folder. And we actually want to look at the shared folder's properties. And now we have our sharing, we have our classification, we have all of that good stuff. But for us, we want to go to our security tab, then click on advanced. We want to add the permissions. we actually want to set the principal to domain users. Oh, helps if I spell domain correctly. And from there, we want to add a condition, and we want to add the condition resource confidential equals value high. That way we can set permissions so that the domain user can actually access this resource when the resource is set to confidential and the value is still equal to high. Because we can actually modify it so that if the resource and the confidential level is set to high, maybe users can't view it. And there is our domain user for our condition. And go ahead and click OK. And OK. Let's hop back over to our domain controller. And let's go ahead and open up our directory, Active Directory Administrative Center. So we're going to expand out our domain access control. We are looking for central access policy. And you'll notice that currently there are no new rules yet or policies. We're going to create a new one. So create central access policy. And we're going to name this Central Access Policy 1. We're going to click on the Add button. And you'll notice nothing is here. In the search option, we're actually going to look at our Central Access Rule 1. But you'll notice we don't have the ability to create it. Okay, so because of that issue, that stopped a lot of people from completing this lab. And the funny thing is, normally you set up the rule before the policy. So I'm going to go back to Dynamic Access Control. I'm going to set up my rule first. So I'm going to do these steps kind of backwards. The name is going to be Central Access Rule 1. Under our target resource, we're going to go ahead and click on Edit. We want to add a condition, and we want resource confidential equals value high. Permissions leave the same. All of that leaves the same. And that way we have our rule. Now go back to dynamic access controls so we can access the central access policies. Now let's create our new policy. Central access policy 1. Add. Now we have our rule. Now we can click OK. So here we had to do the steps backwards, rule then policy, instead of the directions, policy then rule. And that's it for this portion. Go ahead and exit out of it. Let's go ahead and access our GPO again. In this one, we're looking at the default domain policy. Let's go ahead and edit it. We're going to navigate to our computer, then policies, then Windows, then security, and then we're going to expand out our file system. And there we have our central access policy. So what we need to do is we need to go and right click on it, and we need to manage our central access policies. There is our policy. We're going to apply it to all computers. Click OK, and now it's part of our GPO. Go and exit out. So now let's make sure our GPO is going to update the top over to server 1. I'm going to log off instead of doing a GP update. I'm going to log back in. And just in case that didn't work, I'm also going to open up my administrative command prompt and do a GP update. Just in case, that way I can make sure my policy is being pushed to this PC. Okay, now that that's done, let's go ahead and explore our file shared folder. Let's go ahead and look at the properties of document 1. If we look at the securities tab, we should also now see advanced. We now have a central policy, and that's our policy that's being applied to it. So that way we can have a predefined policy for certain resources. That's actually it for this lab. I want to thank you.